Of Chatham House, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this discussion this evening with the President of Syria, Ahmed al-Sharaa. He's going to be speaking in Arabic with translations through the headphones, and we have, because of the logistics, if I can put it that way, of arriving at this point, we have about half an hour. We are, I should say, developing a considerable stream of work on Syria at Chatham House as a key area supported by the Open Society Foundations and by the Asfaris Foundation. A very brief introduction. The President was born in Saudi Arabia to a Syrian family, grew up in Damascus. He became de facto leader of Syria's transition following the overthrow of the previous regime in December 2024. He has served as President of Syria since his formal appointment in late January 2025. Before that, he was for many years the leader of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, an Islamist armed group that played a leading role in fighting and deposing the Assad regime. Its origins were linked to al-Qaeda, and he had years earlier joined al-Qaeda in Iraq. In September, Germany. Welcome to Chatham House. Thank you for your time. Let me ask you whether you've had a successful meeting in the UK and whether the UK will be opening its embassy in Damascus soon.
أول شيء مرحبا بكم. وجوهكم شوي شاحبة من الانتظار ربما، فشوي خليكم فرفشة أكثر يعني. نعتذر على التأخير طبعا. بداية بالتأكيد احنا بعد وصولنا إلى دمشق ببضعة أيام كان استقبلنا أول وفد أتى من المملكة المتحدة، وكان وفد تمهيدي إن صح التعبير، ثم بعد ذلك زارنا وزير الخارجية أيضا بعدها ببضعة أشهر وتفاهمنا تناقشنا في وقت على
المملكة المتحدة. We received a delegation from the UK. It was an introductory delegation, as it were. Then we were visited by the Foreign Secretary after a few months. We discussed the situation in Syria, the past and the future, and then we implemented the procedures directly as we have done with many of the countries. Britain has contributed to supporting Syria to lift the sanctions, and of course the relationship continues. The different meetings that we have conducted in the UK will enhance trust, and we will be full ready on the diplomatic level, on the embassy level and others.
You said at the Doha Forum in December, just a few months ago, that you would stick to your commitment of having elections within 5 years of your taking power, which you did in December 2024. So less than 4 years from now. Are you still on track for that?
في خلل شوي بالترجمة فما لو يعيد المترجم.
He's saying there's some sort of confusion in the interpreting, so can you please repeat so that I repeat the interpretation?
Are you still on track to have elections within 5 years of when you took power?
نعم بالتأكيد يعني سوريا وضعت
Of course, Syria has conducted a national dialogue congress. It had recommendations including the constitutional declaration, and that included the elections in 5 years. And we will have we have the elections of the People's Assembly, the Parliament, and the first session will be next month. We will review the laws and legislations, and we are paving the way for free elections in Syria.
When will people be able to form political parties?
بما أنه الدستور أبطل العمل فيه
as
بعد إعلان
the
دستوري بصدد الدستور
constitution is not applicable after the constitutional declaration. The People's Assembly will establish commissions that will redraft the constitution, including legislations for political parties, where we will have the infrastructure for the elections that will help.
You're often asked about what reassurance you can give that the government will not bring Islamist social norms to the whole country. And people point to concerns like people detained for breaking their fast during Ramadan, or an alcohol ban in Damascus, though it was overturned. What measures are you putting in place to make sure that administration is not used to restrict people's personal freedoms?
الإدارة تعتمد على القوانين الموجودة في
The
البلد.
administration applies the laws of the country, and then we would have the constitution applied and the parliament. And the mission of the president is to apply the laws rather than impose them on people.
Let me ask you about your mission to unite Syria. The US has recently backed you in the movement of your armed forces against the Kurdish forces in the northeast.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Let me ask you about your mission to unite Syria and about the Kurds in particular. The US has backed you and your armed forces moved against the Kurdish forces recently. Are you now going to bring Kurdish fighters inside the army?
سوريا منذ وصولنا إلى دمشق.
Syria, as at our arrival in Damascus, agreed that the state will only have, the only party that will have weapons will be the state, and it will not be militias and arms groups and de facto authorities with weapons implementing their own laws. This will not be a country where people can live. Based on this, we had a lot of dialogue sessions with SDF. The first agreement was on the 10th of March 2025. The agreement had a term of expiry. We familiarized the supportive country, including the UK and France, with it. Then the agreement expired, and then we had some sort of military clashes. The US did not support us militarily. It tried to solve this problem, but the opportunities given were misunderstood by SDF. The Syrian government has legitimacy. SDF had limited legitimacy to combat ISIS then, as the former regime lost its legitimacy. Therefore, world countries participated with SDF to defeat ISIS. But now those countries by law have to cooperate with the state that is recognized by the UN. Based on these procedures, we had a choice that we presented to the US so that they do not leave their allies. Therefore, we suggested that we merge SDF with the Syrian army. And then we added the agreement of the 29th of January, which stipulates for the integration of SDF with the Syrian institutions, including the military.
Let me ask you some things about the region, which is not quiet. What would you like the outcome of the conflict between the US and Iran to be?
لا شك أن إيران
No doubt
تدخلها في سوريا
that Iran's interventions in Syria for the past 40 years helped the former regime to displace Syrians. We suffer from losing more than 10 million people who left Syria, and we have the missing people whose numbers are close to 250,000. And Iran participated and spearheaded the operation of the Syrian regime against the Syrian people. We do not have a problem with Iran in Tehran. We have a problem with Iran in Damascus because it occupies Syrian towns and villages and displaces people. But our policy in Syria was clear: to reach Damascus and to safeguard security and to establish economic development. We have been patient with regard to the relationship with Iran. Of course, the ongoing war affects the region negatively, cutting off energy supplies to the international economy. Iran has a problem of trying to manufacture the ballistic missiles and the nuclear bomb and trying to influence other countries. We recommend negotiations rather than military power because it will lead to more dangers.
Is Syria going to stay neutral while that conflict goes on?
بالتأكيد ما لم تتعرض سوريا إلى استهدافات مباشرة من أي جهة فهي
unless Syria is targeted by any party, Syria will remain outside any conflict. We had enough war. We paid a large bill. We are not ready for another war experience. Those who have been in war know the value of peace. We are trying to support the Syrian economy, work on reconstruction, receive the refugees who were displaced from Syria, and then transform Syria into an economic location, utilizing its strategic geopolitical location in the region. We want Syria to have ideal relationships with the entire region, with Lebanon, Iraq, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and world powers like the UK, France, Germany, and the US. I think that Syria is qualified to start a strategic relationship network. No one is ready to be involved in war, and we will not be in it unless we are subject to aggression and we have no diplomatic solution.
There's one country in the region you didn't mention, and that is Israel. There were a lot of reports last summer that you were having direct talks with them. What would it take for you to normalize relations with Israel?
نحن منذ وصولنا إلى دمشق إسرائيل تعاملت مع سوريا بشكل سلبي.
At our arrival at Damascus, Israel dealt with Syria negatively, bombing locations, did incursions in Syrian territories, and violated the 1974 agreement. We applied the same policy we're talking about. We tried dialogue with indirect negotiations and then direct negotiations. We reached good points, but then the Israelis changed their opinion last minute.
Have you helped stop Iranian weapons getting to Hezbollah in Lebanon?
من واجب الدولة السورية أن تحمي حدودها.
It is the duty of the Syrian state to protect its borders. No state would accept open borders and smuggling of weapons, because if weapons are smuggled, other things would be passed with it. we paid a price for the intervention of Hezbollah in Syria for 14 years. It participated effectively with the Syrian regime in killing the Syrian people. Despite this, when we arrived at Damascus, we applied policies that do not harm the situation in Lebanon. We were keen that the conflict is not spilled over to Lebanon, but we want to protect our borders, and our duty is to prevent the smuggling of weapons and other things.
I'm going to take that as yes. What about Russia? You did visit the White House last year, but you visited the Kremlin a month earlier. Are you going to keep the Russian military bases open in Syria?
Can you repeat the last part of the question, please?
Are you going to keep the Russian military bases in Syria open?
First of all, this is an indication that the Syrian diplomacy is active. We go to the White House and then later we go to the Kremlin. It is very difficult for any country in the world to have full balance between conflicting parties. Russia as well was involved in the war against the Syrian people. There are historical relations and other links between Russia and Syria in the past. We tried to de-escalate with the Russians. Amongst tens of bases, only 2 remained, and we are trying to make them bases for training the Syrian army.
Let me ask you finally 2 more personal things. I believe you have 2 daughters. Would you like to see at some point a woman become president of Syria?
First of all, I only have 1 daughter. I have 2 sons and 1 daughter. 2 correct. I think anyone who would be involved in public affairs realizes it is a big responsibility. I do not wish this on my children.
Many would agree with you on that. And finally, you've talked at some length, very openly, about the many years when you fought for Al-Qaeda and related groups. Do you still consider their aims desirable, or is their mission complete?
Can you repeat the last part of the question? Sorry, the mics are not working well.
Sure. You talked about fighting for many years for Al-Qaeda and related groups. Do you still consider their goals desirable, or is their job done?
There were historical circumstances that the region suffered from then. It was subject to a lot of wars that didn't have any explanation for the youth. The difficulties led people to different circumstances. I did not agree with Al-Qaeda policies. If I did, I would have continued with them. So I was keen for this not to go back to Syria. So we are working so that Syria is not subject to what Iraq was subject to. If I was persuaded with their policies, I would have continued with them. I do not think that they serve people or their interests. Therefore, I moved into a different policy. I created it and I I paid the cost for it. And I think that this choice was a good choice that led to the ousting of this criminal regime that perpetrated crimes against the Syrian people. Therefore, we lifted the injustice on the Syrian people.
Thank you very much for that. Let's go to some questions. We've got a lot over here. Front left. Yes. But you need to wait for a microphone.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. President...
Please, could you say who you are?
Mariam Say, Al Jazeera. I would like to ask you a question a lot of us here as journalists are concerned about. As the first one who had been coming from a background that you have been excluded and designated, pretty much like Jerry Adams and Nelson Mandela, do you think you can make a bridge between the East and the Muslims and the European leader? Today you are in London. Can you do something for Gaza people, self-determination?
There's a lot of elements to that question.
يعني سوريا لديها وحدة حال مع غزة عانت من نفس ما عانى منه أهل غزة.
Suffered from the same thing that the Gazan people suffered from. The Syrian people empathize with the people of Gaza and get affected by the bombings there. But Syria now is concerned with reconstruction and building. The damage that Syria was subjected to is similar or more than that was done in Gaza. So all of us are wounded.
In the front again.
Thank you. I am Aysu from Turkish news agency Anadolu. Mr. President, Israel's expansionist moves continue across the region, with recent strikes already hitting...
Can you speak it clearly, please? The mics are not working well. Can you please?
Are you concerned that Syria could be a direct target after Iran? Also, have you had any contact with the Iranian sides since the beginning of the war? Thank you.
Okay, the question is, could Syria be a direct target of Iran? And has Syria had direct contact with Iran since this started?
We do not have official relations with Iran since the war. Syria may be targeted. This is a possibility. We do not want to start aggression on anyone. We do not want Syria to be an arena of war. But unfortunately today, things are not governed by wise minds. The situation is volatile and random policies control the region. This harmed a lot of countries, including GCC countries. Therefore, we try to select the peaceful situation for our people, so we are not targeted and we are not in a position to respond.
Thank you. Gentleman right in the middle. Please signal to me. I will try and get in. We've got a few minutes. Just a few. You're right in the middle. Yep.
Right. Mohammed Muqid, humanitarian activist.
Mohammed Muqid.
Can I speak it in Arabic? Can I say it in Arabic?
No.
Right.
Well, if you keep it really brief.
Yeah, just... All right. So my question is sevenfold. Just kidding. About the transitional justice in Syria, we think that the current situation, this file specifically, or in this issue specifically, that goes really slowly when it comes to the retribution and the transitional justice in general for the crimes and the massacres and genocide done by the regime, while we see that the trials for the Syrian coast after the Inquisition and the report, the last report, we saw that trials started really quickly, and also it was published public and live broadcast. Can we see? Can you confirm that actually transitional justice in Syria for the Syrian people for what the regime has done for many years, with all the evidence that we have, it is still a priority with all funding and resources?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question.
بالنسبة للأعداء الانتقالية بالتأكيد
As
سوريا
for transitional justice, of course, Syria, as at the beginning, is concerned about this. But as this is justice, it needs to be regulated by law so that it is not only transitional or retaliatory, because it threatens civil peace. Therefore, we should have a clear legal reference for trials against people so that there is no retaliation. In addition, a large number of people committed crimes across the past 14 years, making it very difficult for any country in the world to hold accountable tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. Therefore, we have reviewed similar situations that other countries went through, and we set criteria for accountability, including perpetrating mass crimes, those who were involved in random indiscriminate barrel bombs, shellings, and so we set the criteria. Then we had statistics, or we counted the wanted, so that things are not left loose. We needed to have a list of names and the accusations. Many of those who committed those kinds of crimes left the country. Some trials were broadcast. Syria was isolated from the world in the past period, and we were not able to ask countries to hand over those criminals. So we cannot do this until we have official relationships and we have diplomatic relationships and embassies. Syria was also out of the Interpol system. Therefore, we needed to be included in the legal systems in order to be asking for those criminals to be handed over back to us. All of this is needed. So we need an infrastructure for the transitional justice. It is a route that takes time. In addition, we should not remain tense, as it were, using headlines that would spread fear amongst communities where members would think they are wanted. We are those who were subject to this injustice. We lost our loved ones. I'm not saying this while I was comfortable. I was under the hammer, as it were. Therefore, I feel the pain of the people who suffered from those crimes. But if you have been served injustice, you are not allowed to serve injustice to others, including those who perpetrated it.
There are a lot of hands up, and I have a firm promise to the President's people that we're going to stop with that. Now, let me just say, a lot of questions online from Syrians, some of them saying I'm young Syrians, living outside Syria, saying, what can I do to help? So let me ask you, finally, you said yesterday in Germany that you're going to try and get 80% of the Syrians who moved to Germany, 800,000 people, to go home in 3 years. How are you going to do this?
In fact, this statement is somewhat exaggerated. I did not say this. It was said by others, by the Chancellor. He said that. The return of the refugees is directly linked to the reconstruction of Syria. European countries received the refugees, and we thank them for this. We should not do this by just sending people in airplanes to go back. They may want to leave again. This process must be managed well. The generosity of those countries must not be treated negatively. Refugees have a right to return voluntarily and with dignity. We have passed a lot of stages in this, starting with the ousting or the toppling of the Syrian regime, which opened the door for the Syrian refugees to return. Last year, we have received more than 1.3 million to Syria. Some returned voluntarily to their destroyed villages and towns. Second, the spirit of belonging came back to the Syrian people. We have to rebuild the country, create jobs for people. The situation with which the Syrian people left to the destination countries have changed because those people started new lives. They have started families, they have children, they have commitments. So it's not easy for them to start their life from zero, and this needs to be managed logically. Therefore, we want to solve this through reconstruction and investment and inviting big businesses and companies to Syria. We want to attract big businesses from all the places that we visit to come and work in Syria. We had business discussions with the German companies, and we invited them, and we told them that we look at the Syrian refugees in Germany as an opportunity for Syria because they have learned the way of work of the Western companies, and when those companies invest in Syria, start business in Syria, they would have a priority of employing those people. If we have those right circumstances, I would guarantee then that 80% of the people would return to their country, to Syria.
Thank you for that. And on that, I'm afraid we are going to have to stop. There's a forest of hands up. Thank you for those questions. Thank you enormously for your patience. Thank you to the President's team. And thank you to everyone, including outside, who made the security possible. It has not been the easiest of logistics, but we're very glad that everyone stayed with us. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.